Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Championship Leadership Podcast. We got Brandon Hakim here from LA, Los Angeles, and he's drinking a big jug of celery juice, which we just saw before. I was like, what's that, man? I got to try it out. So welcome, Brandon. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I know you're a little bit prepped for this. Many usually are. But first question, Championship Leadership is the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you when you hear championship leadership?
I think the thing that comes to mind is the word integrity. And what I mean by that isn't someone who's, necessarily honest or always tells the truth, although that's all important. What I mean by integrity is someone who their internal world is in alignment with how they act outside in the world. And through that alignment, they're then able to make an impact on other people and have other people join their cause or their movement or what they believe in.
Yeah, I love it. It's awesome. And I just enjoy hearing all the different definitions of championship leadership. I think we're right around 300 episodes right now. And every time it's a little bit different. So I love it. That's why that's why I keep asking that question.
And just a quick to go a little bit further into that, I think the reason that resonates most with me is because life all comes down to, like, in my opinion, being authentic, living an authentic life, living a true life to yourself. And how many of us don't do that? And I think it's possible to quote unquote lead other people, but doing so in a way that really doesn't fully align with who you are or with your deepest self. So I think being able to live your life in that authenticity and have other people join in that is what excites me about leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, man. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? We do post the video, so there's a possibility you're watching this right now, but a lot of the listeners are through, iTunes and Stitcher, Spotify, all the likely places for a podcast. And you got a lot of books behind you. And I know reading books is a big part of your story. So maybe tell us a little bit more about you and the path that you've been on and where that has taken you to what you're up to today.
Yeah. So for me, all of this started in college. I was sitting in a college class and I was just thinking to myself, when will I ever use this information?
Yeah.
So I went to the dean of my university and I told her, I feel like we're getting an outdated education. And I didn't tell her this.
You legitimately went to the dean?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
But I didn't do it to think that I had figured all of this out or to tell her, like, hey, I got you. I just wanted to see what she'd tell me. I'm like, look, I'm a young kid. I'm, I want to see different perspectives. Like, tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And she didn't. She said, we're coming out with a new curriculum. We're working on it. And then I'm like, with all due respect, I've seen the new curriculum. It's the same classes with different names. I'm like, and then I had all these ideas, you're whatever, 19, 20. So excited. I'm like, what if we did this and that? And she's like, oh, no, we can't do those things. And then she started talking about how she's frustrated with her kids in middle school and high school and said, look, the problem isn't the school, it's the education system. And I'm like, okay, if the dean of the university that I'm going to is telling me this, I'm going to believe her. Yeah. And that's when I started reading books. One book turned to two into four into over 1,000 books. And I've since taught over 420,000 students online how to read faster, learn more efficiently, and just live a better life. I really came to believe that anyone who's achieved anything beyond mediocrity knew things we never learned in school. They were insiders. So for me, it's all about uncovering those insider secrets through books or through courses or through talking to people and sharing them with others.
So you took that journey and reading over 1,000 books, and now you've taken that and teach that to others and how to efficiently and effectively read and not just read, but like actually be able to take the information from the book and apply it.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there. It's almost like a badge of honor to talk about how many books you've read, but but I think there is a big disconnect between reading and actually taking something from it to move you forward, right?
I think you're so right about that. Uh, I say in my course as well, or all of my reading courses, I'm like, yes, set a reading goal of how many books you want to read each year, but also realize that there is zero inherent value to reading a book. It's not an assignment
Yeah.
like in school. Nobody cares that you
Right.
finished a book, or nobody cares that you did a great job on this assignment. And nobody cares, truthfully, how many, or they shouldn't care how many you've read.
Yeah.
All that matters is what have you taken from what you've read or you've learned from other places and then applied, and then not only applied, but ingrained so deeply that it's become a part of who you are.
Yeah. Right.
That's what it's
Absolutely.
about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that you're doing that. That's awesome. Have you written any books?
No, I haven't written any books.
Not yet. You going to? Is it on your list?
It's not on
I
my
think
list, no.
it's not. No interest. Not at this time. Okay.
When
That's
I was
also interesting for someone that's read so many books to not really have an interest to write.
yeah, I mean, I love writing, and I send out a daily email newsletter, which I write, and things like that.
You probably got a book right there, just in your newsletters. You could
I
talk
honestly
them into a
do.
book.
I mean, I
Yeah.
have ebooks that I send to people with a collection of the newsletters, and people love it. They're like, "Well, it would be so great if you put a collection," but
Yeah.
I don't know, just
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, and there's no sense in writing a book just to write a book. So I love it. Write one because you really have the interest to do it. But well, let's shift gears just a little bit. Who outside of I'm sure there's a lot of people that have influenced you through the stories that you've read and the books that you've read. But also wondering, are there any people in your life, leaders, coaches, mentors that have directly impacted you? And what is it about those folks? Like, what are some of the characteristics that have really stood out to you from those people?
What stood out to me that made them great mentors?
Yeah. So what? Yeah. What are some of the leadership characteristics, or just personal characteristics that
Yeah.
stood out from those people?
Yeah. Well, I feel so blessed. And I think about this often. I look back on all of the people that have had an impact on me. And I look and I'm like, if even just one of them was missing, I would feel like I would be nowhere.
Hmm.
Forget about outwardly what I've accomplished, but inwardly, I'd be nowhere close to who I am or how I'm able to live today.
Yeah.
And just to name one of them, for example, but they all share one trait in common, which
Sure.
I'm glad you asked. When I was 19, I started volunteering at a retirement home, and I became really close with this man who was 99 years old.
Yeah.
And for 4 years, he was the grandpa I never had. I never met my grandpas, and it was always when I was growing up, a great source of pain for me. So it was so exciting to have somebody fill that role,
Yeah.
15 years later. And we would go on double dates together. We'd go to Costco for pizza with him and his girlfriend. He was dating somebody in his retirement home.
That's awesome.
We just sit and talk about life. And in so many ways, he showed me what life is really all about. He showed me what's important. He showed me, what it means to really connect with someone. He showed me just this feeling of love that I hadn't experienced to that point. But I think that something that really stood out to me about him is I could just be sitting there at the table with him, at dinner or whatever. And he would ask me, "How are you doing, Brandon?" And it's a question you hear all the time, right? How are you? But you could just deeply feel how much he cared
Yeah.
when he would ask that question. And I think, I look back to everybody who's had a deep impact on my life, the level or the degree that they cared blows my mind. It's not that they cared a little bit. And honestly, I don't even know why they cared so much, but
Hmm.
the degree that they cared, and that caring showed in how they communicated, how they went above and beyond to check in with me, how they went, to make sure that I was getting certain results, or would spend extra time with me than what was agreed. Some were paid mentors, some weren't. But I think that characteristic of deeply caring way beyond what is expected is really what is required to make make an impact, at least when I look back on my life.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible characteristic. And I don't know, sometimes I don't, I don't think necessarily it's fair to say that it doesn't exist on a grand scale today, but sometimes it feels like it doesn't exist as much as it had in the past. But that's an incredible characteristic to have and to carry on, hopefully, and pass on to others, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you said that it's a rare characteristic, it really is. I think of a book called The Go-Giver.
I
It's
love that book, by the way.
a great book. Yeah, just a little
Mhm.
short, story. And um, the third law was, about how most relationships are 50-50.
Yeah,
It's always like, okay, this is the agreement that we have, or I do this, you do that.
right.
And those are the relationships that fail. And I think those are the
Yeah.
leaders that fail as well, when they're like, okay, this is my job responsibility, this isn't. This is what's expected of me, this isn't.
Hmm.
And it
Hmm.
doesn't matter if you're like formally a leader or not. I mean, anybody in their job position is a leader. And if they don't,
Yep.
care to that degree, like, okay, this is what's expected of me, 50-50. So that's yeah, I think it's incredibly rare to care
Yeah.
to that degree. But when somebody does, it shows and it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I love. And I think that's true for probably many leadership characteristics would be oftentimes like we're talking, they can be a little bit rare, but they're really not complex. Like it's not hard to care about somebody, to really kind of go the extra mile, or to, like you say, to go 100% all into a relationship, not just with the 50-50 mindset. Like all of those things are very simple to do, but not easy, right? So that's I think why, that's the catch, right? That's why it's not as common as unfortunately we would like it to be.
Right. And I think you could even draw a little, maybe I'm reading into this a little bit too much, but you can even um, like draw it and make it go full circle, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, integrity or being
Absolutely.
authentic. When you're
Yeah.
authentic and you're in touch with yourself, I think you care more. It's just a
Yeah.
natural, it's not a formula to leadership. It's not, okay, I'm going to do this and
Hmm.
act this way. It's just like being in touch with yourself and letting that express in how you are with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. What's his what's your vision for what you're up to, and how many did you say? 420,000 people, is that right? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, more than 420,000 people have taken
More
the
than
courses.
420,000. So that's an incredible impact that you've already made. So what's the vision for you? Because I say it all the time on here, and people that are listening probably are sick of it. But I'm a football guy, so I think of a Bill Belichick or Nick Saban, just these coaches that have continuously kind of been to the pinnacle of their profession, competing against the best in the world, and they continue to find a way to reach the top, is because of the vision that they're able to see that some others aren't, and also having the courage to take action on that. So what's your vision? What's more importantly the impact you want to make through that, let's say even short term, next 5 years?
Yeah. I guess there's two ways to say it, but what comes to mind for me is that I really believe that what's the norm out there in the world is not necessarily normal.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, I remember when I was in college, one of there were a few quotes that really resonated with me. One was uh, Oscar Wilde said, "Everything popular is wrong." Mark Twain said, "Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect." Uh, Earl Nightingale said, "If you don't know what to do, just look at what everyone else is doing and just do the opposite, and you'll
Yeah.
probably never
Right.
go wrong a day in your life." And I share all of that, not to say that any of those things are true, but just to question the idea of what everybody does and we consider normal isn't necessarily normal. And I just have a vision for our individual lives, for society, for the world, um, that is much bigger than I think how we're living today. I see a
Hmm.
world
Yeah.
where people are filled with joy and they're spreading that joy. And it's just a natural emanation of who they are and how they live. And not so stuck in the mind and always thinking and figuring things out and overthinking and not really connecting with other people and always just trying to get to the next goal. And so really my vision is to, even if I play a small part, but in creating more joy in the world, that is what
I
excites
love
me.
it. Yeah, I love it. Beautiful. Um, this is totally off topic a little bit, but coming back to what you said about your dean, is she still the dean at that college?
No,
Just
she's
curious.
not. She's not.
Okay. Just curious. Um, what you kind of talked a little bit about this next question, um, but I always ask people about kind of that fork in the road moment. I think we all have many of these moments, but sometimes there's one or two that really kind of stand out. So if you could kind of think of a moment in your life where you're at that crossroads, right? And you're trying to decide if you want to go left or right. And some maybe, I think like Mark Twain said, or there was one of them in there where, the majority's kind of going one way, but you kind of feel pulled to go, right instead of left. And it's always a difficult decision to make because we're always wanting to know, like, we want the guarantee, right? Well, if I go right, is it going to work out, right? And I think that's a beautiful part about life, is that we don't know the answers, and you got to take the leap of faith and find out. And so, obviously you made the decision that you did, which has you where you are today, but had you not, you'd be in a very different place. Is there a moment that comes to your mind that you could share with us that could help maybe someone that's in that moment right now trying to decide?
Yeah, I think, there's so many like dominoes that then knock down
Mhm.
many other dominoes. But for me, the
Totally.
one that comes to mind more than any is what appears to me to be the first domino that knocked down everything else. And it was, in ninth grade, I went to a new school and I didn't go to the high school where all of my friends went. So I went to this new school, very small school. I had
Okay.
no friends. I spent every Saturday night home alone. Um,
You chose to do that?
well, kind of. I mean, it was just like I had applied to this school. I applied, I got in, and it was just
Okay.
kind of like,
Yeah.
my parents are like, yeah, just go for a year. If you don't like it, you can always go back. It's not
Yeah,
a
sure.
And of course, I didn't know that I would, lose touch with all my old friends. I didn't know that it'd be so
Yeah.
difficult for me to make new friends. And,
Right.
I was very shy also. So, um, then there was and for 3 or 4 months, I had one friend in ninth grade. And the reason we bonded so much is because we both came from different schools.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
all we talk about is how much we didn't like this school.
Really?
But what was really interesting is it was 3 weeks past, it was February, it was 3 weeks past the deadline of when you had to commit if you're going to enroll for the next year or not.
Okay.
And I had just spent 3 or 4 months telling myself how there's no way I'm coming back. I can't wait to go back with all my friends, whatever. So the registrar, whoever it was, like pulls me into her office and is like, hey, I need to know, are you coming back next year or not? And I'm like, oh, can I can you give me can I go talk to my parents, whatever? And she's like, no, it's been 3 weeks already, past the deadline. I need to know now. And I, I just don't even know why I says like, okay, I'll stay.
Yeah.
It just like kind of came
Yeah.
out,
Right. Sure.
and that made all the difference. I remember it's funny how like life seems to give you signs.
Sometimes it's best to have to make those decisions quickly, right? Kind of like that.
Yeah, and I think there are several lessons there that I actually love to share. But just a quick note about the story that I thought was also fun was, I remember a week later in English class we read Robert Frost's poem "The Road Less Traveled,"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and really, I always thought that the poem was about that. Oh, you take the path that's way less. You go like completely the opposite of what everyone's doing, and but when he was explaining English, like that's actually not what it says at all. Because
Hmm.
what Robert Frost says in the poem is that the roads, they were traveled almost the same. It was just that one was traveled slightly less than the other.
Yeah.
The point of the poem was that once you start on a path and you make that decision, it leads to an entirely different life. Chances are you're not going to then backtrack and go back to that other road.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was like, that is
Yeah.
exactly what happened to me with that
Yeah.
small decision. So I think a few lessons there that really stand out. Number one is the degree to which we can bullshit ourselves with thoughts that aren't true, yet we act as if they are true. For
Yeah.
4 months, I was telling myself and psyching myself out by saying, there is no way that I want to stay here. This is absolutely the wrong thing. I was convinced of it.
Yeah.
And, but how is it that, why did I say, yes, I'll stay?
Right.
And why is it that I can look back now and say, that was the best decision I ever made because it completely changed my life. And the next 3.5 weeks or 3.5 years of that school were amazing and shaped me in so many ways. So that's one lesson.
Yeah.
Another one is how really the best things in life happen from things that could have very easily not happened. It's not the big sweeping things that shape everything. It's the one party that you almost weren't going to go to and you decide to go to.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize that it's a fork in the road.
Right.
But
Yeah.
you end up meeting your husband or wife at that party, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the other lesson there is a lot of times you're at a fork you're at a fork in the road, but you don't even know
You
that
don't
you're
even
at a
know it.
fork in the
Yeah.
road.
I love
You
that.
don't know
Right.
until you look back. And I think the third lesson is trusting your intuition. I
Yep.
think deep down I knew that I wanted to stay.
Yeah.
And I could have, spent again all of the bullshit thoughts. But when you get
Yeah.
out of the thinking and you just kind of feel into the problem, you're like, what feels like the right decision for me? Because more thinking, there's no extra thinking is going to help me get more clarity on this. I already
Right.
know. I've already, so I mean, I think it's a lot of lessons there.
I love it. What did the friend that you met at that school, did he decide to stay or
Yeah,
did
he
he leave?
stayed too.
He did. All
He
right,
stayed
good.
too, and he's still one of my closest friends, and
That's great.
is yeah, and it's cool too because I think after I made that decision that I'm gonna stay, um, I started loving the school, and so did he.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess one other quick lesson there too is uh, you got to burn your ships.
Yeah.
When you know that okay, I'm going down this path, kind of like the Robert Frost poem, and there's no option to go back and go down the other path, then you can really enjoy that path.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Robert Frost because that's kind of exactly what I think about every time I ask this question. So um, I appreciate your time here today as we kind of wrap this up. If there were one or two things, we've already, I think, given some good little nuggets that people could take and put some action into. But if there were one or two things that you could give the listeners that if they did take action today would help move their life forward today, what would that be?
I think it's two things. I used to run a restaurant for many years, and there was a I don't know, pastor or priest or I don't know exactly what he was, but he told me once, he's like, Brandon, life is about breadth and depth. Breadth in terms of you want to know a lot about a lot of things, and I'm like, yeah, that resonates a lot with me. I like reading books. And he's like, but it's also about depth. You want to be deeply in touch with yourself. And I think that most of us go through life not really experiencing either. We finish school and we don't really learn too much, after school. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you learn, pick up things here and there, but are you actively doing things to move forward in your career? Are you up leveling your skills? Are you taking online courses? Are you reading books? Are you listening to podcasts? And more importantly, are you doing it in a way that you're then acting on it and moving forward in your life? And then the depth part is, what are you doing to experience more depth and connection with yourself? Whether it's meditating, or I think one of the more important things anybody can do is releasing emotional baggage that we all hold on to. But anyway, I think big picture is just asking yourself, what am I doing on a daily basis to experience more breadth and depth? I think leads to more success in life, also leads to more fulfillment.
Yeah. I love it. That's great. What are a few ways if the listeners want to find out more about you, any of the programs, services that you offer as well, when it comes to what you do, helping people with reading books and holding on to that and being able to read and consume faster, all those great things that you do. What are some ways that they can follow you and learn more?
Yeah, the best way is to just go to insiderschool.com. and at the very least, join the free email newsletter. I think there's just a ton of value and wisdom in there. Every email has the header like, here's another 2-minute email taken from thousands of pages of books just for you. And it's just like, you're just like taking all of that stuff and giving it to you in 2 minutes or less every day. So join that newsletter, insiderschool.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Brandon Hakim. And I think those are two great places to start.
Wonderful, man. One last question, as I do see all the books behind you, and I'm a physical book kind of guy. I'm not a Kindle guy, and nothing against any of them. I do listen to some books on Audible, especially if I'm out for a run. But if it comes down to it, I got to choose. It's a hard physical book. What is it for you?
Oh, out of the two?
Out of Kindle, Audible, or physical book?
Yeah, I've never read a book on Kindle, or
Yep.
I've never read an electronic book other than maybe like scrolling through something on
Yeah.
the computer. So I've never done that before. I love having the physical book, and
Yeah.
I love Audible too. But truthfully, when I have an audiobook, I also have the physical book
Okay.
alongside of it. And I
Following
still like
along.
taking
Yeah.
notes in the book and all of that. So
Yeah.
for me, if it's just one, it's the physical book. I like having that tangible thing. I like being able to take notes in it. I like being able to revisit it, flip through it, pull it out of the shelf whenever I need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here, man. I appreciate you answering that. I just came to my mind as we were closing this out.
I
So
appreciate you asking.
thanks for being here, man. It was a good talk. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.